Hi guys, today I'm going to continue the series on setups versus opponents with mixed weapons. First one works well against an opponent with a long sword or with other weapons, particularly sword and shield if you're in the SCA. The footwork is particularly important in this one. So it is a hanging guard, body and sword fake. So the way this works is we pull from this hanging guard and everybody's looking for the big overcut with the step. So we start the overcut with the step to the left. We land on the ball of the foot. About here, we're going to pivot, and see I'm bringing this sword across so that it maintains a defensive position. I'm going to come back to the other side. So the footwork is very important. So again, I'm going to be here, I'm going to step, pivot, and hit. Step, pivot, hit. Okay, you can work to the other side as well. So I'm going to come up with the cross hanging guard. I'm going to start the step to the right and the overcut with the right. Again, I'm going to land on the ball of the foot. Pivot takes me back across with this A-frame position, and then I pivot away. This is really nice for people who are looking for the big overcut. If they're a longsword person, this can happen off of a thrust or off of them attacking and you do your parry. Start your cut, pivot, come back to the other side. Same thing over here. I've done a thrust or I've done a cross guard parry and I'm looking over here. They're looking for it, turn and hit. Against a sword and shield person, it's kind of nice. Again, it can happen off the thrust or off of a cut versus the shield, but also if they're charging us, we pull up, we start this motion, we pivot over and hit. That kind of pass through with the A-frame is very important because if we do this and just step over with no defense, we might get hit. So it's very important. We pull up, step, pivot through our A-frame, finish the pivot on the cut. And then I have my Pel for the way I practice it. I can just, from here with the A-frame, boom, to the side. It doesn't have to be hugely across. This can be a fairly subtle motion, but the combination of sword and body motion is what really sells it. So see how my body's turned, I'm stepping, I'm cutting, and then I let my body turn my sword, and I can cut. So go ahead and play with that on the Pel. It is a fairly complicated motion, and it's a challenging bit of footwork. So if we show the footwork in isolation, essentially rather than just step off and pivot, we're doing kind of a little double step. So I will actually step, step, and pivot. Step, step, and pivot. And if I'm doing it the other way, step, step, and pivot. So practice that independently with the feet if it's being problematic, and then work the sword in again. The next setup is what I call the undercut. This is designed to defeat people who post up high. So if they're a longsword person and they end up pulling up into the crown, right, a lot, right, this guard. There are other things that can defeat that from the manuals, but a very simple one is essentially throwing a casting shot and then using your pommel hand to deliver a cut from a stable platform. So what I mean by that is I'm gonna throw kind of a casting cut. It's not quite a thrust, it's not a downward cut, I'm definitely coming out. I actually think of it as almost a bounce forward, because again, that kind of little snappy motion really convinces them that this is something they have to deal with. So from that extended position, it's all about the pommel hand. I'm gonna push the pommel hand and snap under. So I'm getting a lot of tip travel with my lead hand moving almost not at all. So pop, under. See how the hands stay high? Both because this protects me and because it's a smaller motion. I want the whole thing coming forward. I tend to do this on a gather step. So I tend to be here, pop, cut. You can do it to either side, pop, cut. Even when we're throwing it to the offside, from here, it's kind of forward popping motion, pushing the pommel. The pommel push gives us a lot of tip travel. The lead hand doesn't have to move very much. If we move the lead hand, it's slower, it takes the sword out from protecting us, and it's a bigger motion, so our opponent's most likely gonna see it. I prefer to do this against an opponent that is aggressing. Certainly if they're staying put, that's fine. What we want is for them to raise. If you are fighting a sword and shield opponent in the SCA, especially if they're using this guard, what we want them to do is to post up is good. Ideally, we actually get them to post forward, so they kind of roll up a little bit. They've got a big shield, they roll up, and that's gonna open that slot to the head. So again, we want this to be a small motion. Against a sword and shield guy, if I can get them a little bit on the lean forward and then I pop forward, they tend to post up a little bit, and then we hit. So that's setup number 2. Setup number 3 is built off of that, and it's just the reverse. And that's part of why the kind of stable lead hand and power on the backhand is so important. Once I've done my post, and I start to do this cut, if I see that they're defending, whether they're here and they pull down, or they're here and they pull over, right? Because I'm fairly balanced and stable, I've started this, I can now reverse it, and I like to step. So it's kind of a fake 1-2. So I do my post, bring it to that side. And if I'm going the other way, post, and I actually prefer a back edge shot for that return. So if I'm starting the initial motion to the offside, the crossed arm version, I'm gonna pop, start the cut, pull the pommel back. So pop, reverse it, pop, reverse it. And like I said, I prefer on the reverse to do it with the passing step. So if I'm throwing it a single, I'm more than likely going to do it with the gather step. If I'm throwing the reverse, more than likely I'm going to pass. You don't have to, but I find it easier to generate power. So that's setup number 3. Setup number 4 is nothing complicated, but it's something that is good to use against someone who is taller than you or likes an extreme range, and it's just a double thrust, but there are a couple things that are really important about this, and then there's a feed onto that. So with the double thrust, if we just do this and kind of jerk at them, we're offering them our sword to take control of. We don't necessarily want that. But if we thrust and retract and step, well, now we're giving them a free avenue to hit us. So with the soft hands, what we want to do is we're going to use a kind of a double gathering step. And I like to post maybe kind of almost just a half disengage. We just want them to think it's going down and low, boom, and then we come right back up. So it's a very small motion. I drive it with the back hand. Again, the lead hand's not doing much. I'm definitely not doing it with my lead wrist. I'm going to get tired really fast. I might hurt myself. So boom, boom, and that's great. And then we can leave getting off the line with a cut. There's a very good chance, if they manage to get the defense, that they're going to push it over to one side. If they do that, we want to hit where they just left. So 1, 2, cut off to the side. 1, 2, boom, cut. So this is good for starting way out of distance, right? I can't really hit them, and even with a full passing step, I'm a little far out. But if I come in behind my threat, boom, cut, works out pretty well. And again, much like with the undercut, I don't want to retract particularly far with my lead hand. So 1, 2, pommel, this keeps the sword in front of me, hit. And I can do the same thing to the other side. 1, 2, hit. And see how my head is on this side of my sword? Very important. Try not to do this and have yourself right there where if you don't stop them, they get to club you in the head. So 1, 2, cut. And then going to that side. 1, 2, cut. Sorry about the chainsaw. Last one for today is just throwing a Mittelhau, a middle cut, into a slot shot. So whether you're starting from an extended guard or from one of the point back guards, doesn't really matter too much. I want to make sure we're leading with the sword, so I'm going to start my middle cut with the passing step. And right about here, I'm going to relax this hand. I'm going to push down. I've talked about this in other videos. If I'm practicing slot shots, so it's going right along, you know, my opponent parries over and I have kind of a straight shot to their head, I actually like to see how tightly I can skim the sides of the lapel. So I don't really hit the middle of the lapel. I actually want to see how tightly I can get to it. So again, boom. You can practice that to the other side. So sword proceeds, cut, down, cut, down, cut, down. And again, we want these small motions ahead of us. If I do this and then this, it's a big tell that something is changing. So we want to see how little, with that relaxed hand, I can get a nice hard cut. From here, nice relaxed hand. And if we can, we don't want it to be 1, 2. Again, that's a big tell. We want to essentially have 2 sword motions and what feels like 1 forward motion. So because I'm trying to have small, subtle motions, as soon as I see that they've started to buy it, I turn it into my next attack. And that's why leading with the sword and making sure that they're buying the feint before I commit my body is very important. Practice those 5, see what you think. Email me if you have questions, and we'll talk about some more next week.